Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday Tea Time for St Andrews Golf Magazine. This evening I'm joined by Les Bailey and Elizabeth Bethel of Pro Golf Now. And this week we'll be discussing the LPGA's Asian Swing and its bearing on the CME globe with so many events in Asia to reflect the status of golf in that part of the world. Then we'll also be talking about last week's first event on the PGA Tour season for 2014-15. Yes, it's only been 3 or 4 weeks since the last one ended, but we'll talk about that, as well as discussing the Ryder Cup task force that's been announced in the last couple of days in a vain attempt to help the United States.
God.
Easy now,
Oh
easy
my
there, bud.
Sorry, I didn't have a chance to celebrate last 2 weeks ago. And then we'll touch on the PGA Grand Slam of Golf. For those of you who are watching in America, unfortunately, it's already happened, so we'll be discussing it, but not at length. We'll also be talking about whether the PGA Grand Slam should be moved around the world, maybe to grow the game. We'll discuss that, and we'll preview the World Match Play Championship coming up this week as well. But we'll start with the LPGA in Asia, and we've already had 2 tournaments, one in China, the Rainwood Classic, which is won by Miriam Lee, and the Sim Derby LPGA in Malaysia, which was won by Shan Feng. This week we're in Korea, and then we go to China again, Taiwan, and then end up in Japan. Elizabeth, it's fantastic to see the LPGA really taking tournament golf in Asia seriously, as opposed to the PGA Tour. There's only 2 tournaments on the PGA Tour in Asia, and it plays an important role in the season, this crucial stage of the year.
Yeah, it does. Well, the whole LPGA season has been kind of perplexing to me, with the Americans starting so strong and just playing gangbusters golf. And then somewhere around the middle of the summer, I date it to the International Crown. They seem to have run out of steam, and I don't really know. I'm curious about that, because they were all playing strong, and then they just couldn't play golf anymore. And then I thought, well, Stacey Lewis is going to pull this out, and then Michelle Wie got an injury. And then Stacey Lewis didn't pull this out. And where is Michelle Wie with her injury? And into the breach came the Asians again to begin to dominate the latter half of the season. And it looks to me as though we've got this this very, very interesting and perplexing international mix of star players at this point. It's not like last year when Inbee Park just dominated, and yet it seems to almost be linked to a wave of national dominance. I think the Koreans are going to win the Hannah Bank and maybe the Mizuno. And then who knows what's going to happen when the tour comes back to the Northern Hemisphere and plays in the Lorena Ochoa in the season-ending CMA Tour Championship. This is a very perplexing pattern that has me kind of watching and waiting.
Well, I think, for one, it's absolutely fantastic that you've got such a mix of players, and yes, the Americans had a fantastic start to the year, and dominated the majors until the LPGA Championship. But yeah, I mean, it's great to see that if one player or 2 or 3 players have a lean time of it, 3 or 4 others can come up and fill their place in the game, and we don't have that in the men's game at the moment, really. I mean, we were looking for somebody to replace Tiger. We seem to have him now. we don't have that group of players that consistently perform on a high level, and it's fantastic to see. And you've got Shan Feng, who's a major champion. She won last week, and no doubt the next 4 or 5 events in Asia will be super competitive, and they play a crucial role in the race for the CME Globe. With what is it, just the Lorena Ochoa Invitational after that to have points before the Tour Championship. So it's great stage for the Asian players to show the world what they can do in their own patch, so to speak. And I think it's down now to the Americans and the Europeans, for that matter, to adapt and contend in these tournaments, because they're almost like playoff events in some way. Less and less players will have a chance to win.
Yeah, and there have been all kinds of curious things. I mean, when you go back to the middle of the summer and to the International Crown, Spain looked like it could take over the world.
Yeah.
Those 4 women looked like they could take over the world, and yet none of them have done that. Munoz has gotten close, but she won on the European Tour the week before Malaysia. But still, given the way they played in July, you'd think that they would be playing at the top of the board, and they haven't been. I think that what I like about this year is exactly what you've described, Matt. There is no dominance.
Right.
There are waves of winning, but there doesn't seem to be any consistent dominance by 1 or 2 or 3 players. Makes it tough to bet.
It does.
Well, I have a question. Is Lydia Ko considered Asian, or is the Australian contingency really defined as something else?
Well, she's from New Zealand.
Well, she's not Australian. She's
I know
lived
that.
in New Zealand,
I know
so
that, but it's close down there. You know what I mean?
It's 1,000 miles from New Zealand to Australia.
She's not really considered Asian. I didn't think, because she's not from Korea or Japan or China or someplace.
She is.
Well, I know
she was born in Korea.
I understand that. Alexander Levy was born in San Diego too, but he still plays for the French flag,
Yeah.
So.
Well, she's going to play for the New Zealand Olympic team.
Right.
I don't think she considers herself Asian.
Okay. That was just a question. When you're saying that. When she's fit, does she go into the category of Asian? If she wins, is it an Asian win, or is it a what win?
No, I would say it's not an Asian win, because she grew up as a Kiwi, and she's developed most of her golf now in the United States, so she's not really as an Asian golfer as you would like, but she certainly won the next few weeks are critical for. She's 1,400 points behind Stacey Lewis, and she needs to win probably 1 or 2 events in the last few weeks to really be close at the end. So it's good to see, and it's competitive, and obviously Stacey Lewis isn't playing as well as she was, and that brings the likes of Inbee Park and Lydia Ko very much into the forefront of things.
And then the wild card is we.
Well,
is we ready to play?
Yeah, if she pulled out the last event she was in, didn't she? So I would say that probably this year has been such a great year for her prior to the injury that will she really go all out to win this CME Globe, or will she take the rest of the year and try and get healthy for next year?
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see soon. She's going to give it a whirl at the Hannah Bank, and we'll see what she can do with what she has.
Well, that would be. On that question, Les, You know, I mean, Michelle Wee's parents aren't Michelle Wee's parents Asian as well?
Yeah, but I think she's Hawaiian.
I stumped you there, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, you did.
She's Hawaii.
I saw it coming too. I knew what you was going to say. I could read your mind.
So, unfortunately, none of these Asian events are on UK television, so I'm not able to keep in touch really apart from online. Your alarm is always half an hour late.
Well, that's because I'm never sure what time we're going to run it, so I kind of have it someplace in the middle there where I'm sure in case I'm out and about. It's a good thing it didn't happen today because I'd have been late, huh?
I thought that was the tornado siren going off.
No, it's time for the Tuesday tea time alarm.
We're going to have to get that as our title sequence. So hopefully, Elizabeth, you can keep me up to date with all the blogs you do over the next few weeks for these Asian events, and then we get to the CME Globe, the CMA Tour Championship. And do you think so far that's been a success for the LPGA?
You know, that's hard for me to think about. In the beginning, I thought it was going to be a high motivator. But with the money going to one person, I think people very early in the game know that they're out.
Yeah.
Despite the long list and points that are being published. I mean, there comes a point early in the season where you're mathematically out of the race. And I don't know how that may be affecting people in the middle range, like Paula Creamer and Christy Carr, for example, who aren't winning. They were playing well, but they weren't winning. And
to play better at the start.
I don't know.
That's as simple as that should be the motivating factor to come out next year and start the year really well, and then you're in with a chance at the end. And I think the LPGA system is far more fairer based on the way you play than, say, the FedEx Cup, which is not based on a whole season. It's loaded at the end, and a player that can win 2 majors and a WGC and had good finishes in every one of the FedEx Cup events and win it. I mean, so I think that is a fairer system, and yes, it will create drama if you get the right players playing well all season and towards the end of the season. You know, the European Tour this year, the race to Dubai, barring Rory falling over and earning no money for the last 4 tournaments, and somebody winning all 4 tournaments, is over. But that's because he's played great golf throughout the entire year, and he's won 4 tournaments on the European Tour. So I think that is much more reflective of how you play, and drama will happen if it's supposed to happen.
I think Matt's still sniveling because Rory didn't win the FedEx Cup. I mean, won everything else.
He did win.
He should have won that too.
I just think that the LPGA season has been a fantastic season. It's been highly competitive, and it's going to pan out like that for the final event. And these next few Asian events will really you'll get a group of players that can win it at the end, and that's because they deserve to. Hunter Mahan, Chris Kirk, Billy Horschel, good players, but they played well in the playoffs. They didn't play well for the rest of the season. You know, but did Billy Horschel deserve to win $10 million? Well,
he got
played great
at the right time. I mean, that's what it's for. Is for
we're always told that the major championships are the right time, and somebody can win 2 of them in a row and not win the FedEx Cup. So that's where I think the LPGA have it over the PGA Tour.
You can't 4-putt the same green 2 days in a row and expect to win the FedEx Cup. Hey, I mean, I think they had to wake him up to putt. He was just tired. He was wore out. He might have done better if he hadn't have played in that event.
So actually, moving on now to the start of, unbelievably, the start of the next FedEx Cup. Last week at Silverado Country Club in Napa, Florida, Sangmoon Bae, and I think, is that his first PGA Tour win? I think it is.
That was his second.
The second.
Yeah, he won Byron Nelson back in 2012, or 13, I guess it
13.
was.
So he won by 2 shots from Stephen Bowditch. Hunter Mahan made a run on the final day, but he came up short. Do you think now Sangmoon Bae, as you say, with the second win, can push on now this early part of the season where you get quite a few different winners and do something like Jimmy Walker did last year?
Well, he didn't ride the last victory to any kind of a, anything outstanding, and he admitted that he tends to get a little anxious when he starts getting in the lead. So I don't know. I'm curious myself to see what happens over the next couple of weeks, because I know he's entered in this week's event in Las Vegas. Yeah, the Shriners at Las Vegas, and I don't know. The jury's still out on him. He's one of those guys that pop up and win a golf tournament and disappears for a while.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the PGA Tour, start of the PGA Tour season is very, it's disjointed in a way, because you've got 3 events in the United States, then it goes to Malaysia for the CIMB. Opposite that, or then the following week, you have the HSBC. You've got Sanderson Farms in Mississippi. Then it goes to Mexico, I think, and then there's another tournament after that in the United States. And I think maybe the PGA Tour should use this part of the year to take advantage of golf in Japan. The Singapore Open has gone from the European Tour schedule.
The problem you run into, the problem that you run into here in the States of trying to pump those kind of events is you're up against the NFL and you're up against the Major League Baseball, and and those are all in their.
But sure. I mean, you have that problem, but you've still got 4 or 5 tournaments in America, and I think this part of the year, most avid golf fans aren't watching the PGA Tour around the world.
No.
So I think it's important to grow the game and take the show on the road, if you like, and co-sanction some events, the Japan Tour.
Well, isn't it growing the game when you can let some of your really top web.com players get a chance to get their feet wet in up against a Billy Horschel and up against a Jimmy Walker and they don't have to worry about beating down Rory and Keimer, and they don't have a full field of people. They just have to deal with a couple of really good players, Matt Kuchar and those kind. And it's a good place for them to get started. A chance to get a few points in their coffers before the European horde comes back, in the Florida swing, and that's when the real season starts, is in the Florida swing.
Yeah, it is. I think everybody would agree with that now. That the Florida tournaments are so strong.
The run up to the Masters, that's the.
Yeah. So just to touch on last week, the tournament moved from Cordoval to Silverado, and had a few quite good successful years at Cordoval. What would you say was the course? Was the course as good as Cordoval, or because I didn't see much of the event myself? So
well, I have to tell you, I've played Silverado years and years ago, but I think Johnny Miller was the driving force behind getting that all up there, because he now owns part of it, and Cordoval is a little further south toward the center of the state, and the draw, the wine country, and all that stuff of where Silverado is at is, I think, the big draw is to bring people in there, let them taste some wine, and have a nice golf tournament.
Yeah, sure. Because I think Fry's there was a few talk a few years ago of Fry's taking it to their own golf course. Is it called the Institute? I think it's an ultra private course.
Yeah, I
but
think
that
so.
doesn't seem to have happened.
No, and you know, the Cordoval is down in the southern Santa Clara Valley, and you know what they're known for down there is garlic. That's where they have the garlic festival, and you know, who's interested in watching garlic grow and smell it, you know. So I think the move to Silverado was a nice one, and it's definitely a nice golf course.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I was really interested in watching Bruce Koepka and a few of those people like that who had, you know, this is his first turn at a real PGA card, and I thought he did fairly well. You know, coming off the European Tour, getting his feet wet in Europe the way he did.
Well, he had a great week at the Dunhill.
Yes.
He was pretty close, and he obviously enjoys playing in Europe, and in the big tournaments he's done reasonably well. So I think this is the time, as you were saying, with the Web.com players. But he because he's more experienced than a Web.com player, he's played up against all the best players in the world. He can have a good run these first 6 or 7 events.
Yeah, I think so too. That was my feeling exactly. You know, he finished well at the Open, and he finished well at the PGA, and that's what got him his tour card. You know, his PGA Tour card.
Yeah. So moving on briefly, we'll touch on the PGA Grand Slam, which for those of you watching in the United States is currently on television now. So we won't talk about who's leading or winning or whatever, but we will talk about the event itself. I think there's always a real shame this event. It's stuffed away on a Tuesday, Wednesday. Okay, Bermuda's beautiful, and you've got a player in the field that didn't win a tournament this year, let alone a major.
Yeah, but he's ranked number 4 in the world. Yeah, back up there. I know he didn't win anything, but he came close. He's ranked number 4 now. He was the top-ranked American player in the Ryder Cup this year.
Well, that wasn't hard.
I don't know if that's a recommendation for anything left.
Well, hey, you know, they had five of the top 7 players in the world on their team. We got one of them on our own team, you know.
Well, I think that the PGA Grand Slam firstly would benefit from only having. So this year it would have been 3 players. 3 players, it's a 3 ball. Just play it as a 3 ball.
Yeah, you got to have a foursome. Come on.
Why?
Cause. Because. Sound like my kid. Why? Because. Why? Because.
Secondly, I think it would benefit from around. This is the ideal sort of exhibition event to really grow the game, say in Africa or South America. Taking these superstar golfers for 2 days, you know, it's an absolute brilliant event. It has potential to really grow the game. Taking it to Bermuda possibly isn't going to grow the game because it's a very small place. You know, and although the course is beautiful, it just has this atmosphere of a lazy sort of Sunday afternoon game, and you know, I think it's should be a bit more serious than that, but it should be used to grow the game, as the PGA constantly tell us they're trying to grow the game, and here's an opportunity to do it, I think.
You know, sometimes you have to do what we used to say in the old gangster movies, is you got to follow the money. And obviously somebody in Bermuda is putting up a lot of money to have that tournament there. Don't you think?
Yeah, from the whole country.
Yeah.
You know,
The whole country.
But I mean, it's
but
great
there's nothing that says that a tournament in Bermuda can't be a high-powered, high-energy tournament. Don't think lazy Sunday afternoon. I mean, you could turn it into a high-powered tournament. Bermuda is a high-energy place if you want it to be. I'm going to defend Bermuda.
But also,
you've waved the red flag in front of the bull now.
look at, I mean, so Rory, so Keimer, so Bubba, they tee off on the first, and they turn to Jim Furyk and they say, "What are you doing here?" I mean,
he's the number 4 player in the world, Matt.
that doesn't mean anything.
Hello.
He didn't win a major. Why is he there?
Because they needed a 4th.
Why?
Because they need a 4th.
It's perplexing to me, I have to say. But anyway, it's still going on, and there's a second day tomorrow. And it is, if anybody hasn't seen it, it's the most incredible golf course, beautiful golf course. The views are unreal, especially on HD television. So we'll touch now on the Ryder Cup Task Force. This is the PGA America's
Oh boy!
to galvanize the United States into becoming more competitive and to stop having this, well, dramatic fallout as Lee Westwood and Graham McDowell have completely slammed it this week. They really have taken it, and Graham McDowell had some strong words to say apparently today about Phil Mickelson and the way he behaved. And but this task force, I think, I'm right in saying, is 11 people, and on it is, of course, that passionate Ryder Cup player Tiger Woods, who most of the time doesn't look like he could give 2 hoots about the Ryder Cup. Phil Mickelson's on it as well. And there's a number of players, past captains, PGA officials. What will this achieve, Les? I don't really see what it's going to achieve.
Well, they need to change the culture, and in my blog today, I pointed out that they have one young player there, in Ricky Fowler. Maybe they should have called in Jordan Spieth and our Patrick Reed or somebody like that to really get a feel for what the youngsters are looking at. But if they don't do something, right or wrong, it's not going to change. We're just going to keep getting our head.
But Les, you cannot change the culture by administrative fiat. You do not change the culture by committee deliberation. I don't care where it is.
I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly. But what they've been doing isn't working. So let's do something different. Maybe they'll find. I think the infinite wisdom here is the calming factor in this whole thing is still Paul Azinger. Azinger said, "Hey, it's too early to talk about it. Everybody's still sore," and he has a meeting with PGA of America in a month, where he's going to go in and sit down and talk to him. I mean, he's the voice of reason in the fog. Okay, he's the last guy to win a Ryder Cup, and he had the winning formula, and I think he knows what it's going to take for us to be competitive again.
Yeah, because it's not about Paul Azinger coming in as captain. He magically wins the Ryder Cup, and then it goes back to how it was last time.
Right.
They have to change the way they think about the Ryder Cup, and I personally do believe that Europe, yes, they have the Eurasia Trophy and they have the Seve Trophy, but they don't really take them that seriously. The Seve Trophy is a proving ground for captains more than players. The Eurasia Trophy, you don't really see the top European players playing in it. But the President's Cup is a terrible event. It's never going to be competitive. You're never going to have the internationals win 3 or 4 Ryder Cups or President's Cups in a row.
But it gives us a chance. It gives us a chance to play golf.
It doesn't. It lures them into a false sense of they're going to go over and whoop Europe. And they don't.
Well, just because they steamroll Africa, you think that thinks they're ready to go up against Rory and the boys,
Yeah, but
no, I don't think they.
Look at the players on the international team. If you just list 3 teams, the international team will probably win as much as the European team. Els, Oosthuizen, Schwartzels, Adam Scott. They've got stars galore, but they can't win because they don't play for a flag. They're from thousands of miles apart. They're never going to be competitive.
Right.
And I think the President's Cup is a distraction for 2 years, Europe has a focus. In 2 years' time, we're going to go to America and win the Ryder Cup. 2 years after that, we host it in France. The players have a focus. They're not distracted by trying to qualify for this team, to qualify for that team. They've one focus, and that's the Ryder Cup. And I think America needs to get back to that.
I agree with that, and I even wrote in a blog earlier in the month that Ian Poulter was worried when he came to Florida back in what was it, January. He was worried because he said it in an interview that he was worried about not making a Ryder Cup. That his sole focus of coming to the U.S. and playing golf was to get on the Ryder Cup team for this year, and we don't have players like that. We don't have that mentality to saying, okay, my focus is, our focus is to win the FedEx Cup and the Masters and the U.S. Open. It's not. I mean, he didn't say he was coming over here to win the Masters. He was coming over here to try to get enough points to get on the Ryder Cup team. He wanted to play his way on it. He didn't do it, but he got picked as a captain's pick.
Yeah.
But we don't have players with that kind of dedication to the Ryder Cup.
The thing is,
and that's the culture that's got to change.
And it has, because the benefits of being like that. Look at the players we have now. We have Graham McDowell, major winner. We have Rory McIlroy, 4-time major winner. We have Keimer, 2-time major winner. These players have competed to get onto the Ryder Cup team. They've proven themselves in the most pressure-packed event in golf, and then they've gone on to win major championships.
Right, but they're heroes in Europe because they won the Ryder Cup, not because they won the U.S. Open, okay? And that culture is missing here. Because our focus here is to win the Masters. It's not to get on the Ryder Cup team and beat Europe in the Ryder Cup.
Well, I mean, it's different. Obviously, it's a different culture, but I think the major championships are equally important to European players, but I think they go around in a different way, and I think they just need to learn from. I mean, look at Ricky Fowler. Ricky Fowler is the perfect example. He came into the Ryder Cup in 2010. He played awesome in his singles match against Eduardo Molinari to rescue a half. He fought really hard till the very end to get a half point. And then he's gone on, he's developed, and he's look at his record this year in the majors, and he was in the Ryder Cup team this year, and I think, and he played great as well for 3 matches. So
until Sunday, I mean, he got 2 halves and a win in the Forsman 4 balls, if I remember right.
Yeah.
But okay, now you've got Patrick Reed, who's fired up to play in the Ryder Cup. Definitely a Ryder Cup style competitor. Got the fire. Some of the criticism this year was taking Webb Simpson and taking Hunter Mahan, and why did Tom pick those 2 players to go to Europe?
Let's be honest, the picks were a total disaster for the United States.
Right. He was counting on there being some fire and a chip on their shoulders because they got beat at Medina, and that just didn't happen. They could have cared less because they lost at Medina. It hurt at the moment when Europe was celebrating on their golf course, but an hour later they'd forgot about it and were headed on home. Did you see how bored that Hunter Mahan was while Phil was venting himself on the news conference?
Yeah. No.
Mahan was looking at his watch. Hey, it's time for me to go, man. But
Les, I also saw how bored Tom Watson was.
Well, Tom Watson's 65 years old. I mean, they were probably having to nudge him to keep him awake, I'm 67, and sometimes I got to get nudged. My wife nudges me sometimes during a movie to keep me awake.
I think that may be closer to the truth than anybody wants to admit. If Tom Watson didn't care, and I don't think he cared deeply, why would the players care?
I think Tom Watson relied on his legendary image, his legendary status, the fact that he's the last American to win the Ryder Cup in Europe in the century before last, and
No. It was the last century. Come on. It was the last millennia, but
did rely on that, and unfortunately, it just didn't work. It just didn't work. You can't rely on it when you've got personalities like Phil Mickelson and Bubba Watson.
That management style doesn't work in the 21st century. It really doesn't.
Imagine Tiger being in that team and Tom Watson being like he was. Maybe Tiger would have galvanized the team some more. I don't know, but it'll be interesting to see what impact the task force has. Anyway, well, this week we have a match play tournament, which is one of the iconic events in the game. The Volvo World Match Play. It's the last year of Volvo sponsorship. 50 years ago, it was an enormous event for Mark McCormack and his organisation, and Arnold Palmer, Gary Player, Jack Nicklaus, all the big stars of the world game. And if you look at the roll of honour of this tournament, it compares with any major championship you care to think of, and it's one of the great events. But unfortunately, with it being up against the PGA Grand Slam, you don't have a major winner from this year in the field, but you do have a strong field. There's 6 of the European Ryder Cup team, and as we've mentioned, Patrick Reed is playing in this tournament as well, and he'll be looking for a big win to follow his WGC earlier in the year. And it's a great format. It's a group stage, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then the knockout over the weekend. And it's near London as well, so easy access for all the players from around the world. And Les, it's a great event.
Yeah, I'm for any match play event. I love match play golf, and I'm glad to see that Patrick Reed is there, experiencing it. That's training for the Ryder Cup right there. No matter how you look at it. Over and do battle.
The London Golf Club is likely to be the next English venue, I would suggest. I may be wrong, but I think everything's there for it to be the next English Ryder Cup venue. But it's good for him. It's great for the tournament that at least one American has bothered to come over for what is quite a rich event as well. And it's a big tournament for the race to Dubai as well, and the players ranked below Rory, this is a big opportunity to win quite a big check.
Well, Rory can still play in it, can he? Isn't he in?
No, it starts tomorrow. It starts tomorrow.
So that's what you're sore about, is because Rory and Martin Keimer are over here playing in this stupid event while they should be over there playing in. That's what. Now I know what he's upset about. I know why he was trashing the World Series of Golf.
No, not at all. I just think that it's such a huge event. This was one of the first professional-only tournaments in the game, and it's such a huge event for IMG, and IMG have basically established this modern game of ours, and I think they deserve some respect. And yes, it's got a good field, but it's nowhere near the field it used to be in the 80s, the 70s, and the 60s, where you had every top player playing it, and
right.
For the first 25 years, it was major champion after major champion that won it. And Ernie Els, he's won it 7 times. And Graham McDowell's won it once. And, it's got that aura, that history around it, and I think the European players and the American players should honour the heritage of the event by supporting it. I know we live in a modern world where there's prize money coming out of everybody's ears all over the world, but I think there's some space for not sentimentality, but just, Volvo have supported our game in Europe for the last 30 years, and they're actually now, this event will be their last sponsorship in Europe. they will be still on the European Tour, but they're totally sponsoring the China Open and making that into a big event. So Volvo are leaving the European golfing scene, and IMG, a very, very big player in global golf. So I think I would have liked to have seen some stronger names come across and play in it. But it should be a good tournament nonetheless. It's got the group stage thing, which I think we all think the Accenture would benefit from, or the whatever it's sponsored by now.
Yeah. Well, at least they moved the venue out of Dove Mountain in January. That's that's a nice thing.
Yeah, I think that it will benefit it, but obviously the timing of the year as well. Now with it being in May, you have the players, you have BMW at Wentworth, you have Quail Hollow as well. So it's going to be quite a tough schedule for it. But I think yes, it would benefit from having that round robin stage and keep the players there a bit longer and interested a bit longer.
Absolutely.
You know, because it's a long way to travel over to the West Coast and then come back for the players and then Quail Hollow. So it could struggle for a field, actually. I don't think it's going to improve the field much, and I don't think you're going to get players. You still might get Phil Mickelson moving his holiday to May.
Well, that the draw of the WCG draw should help a little bit, because it's still good for race to Dubai points and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, very, very much so. And I think, I mean, obviously the global schedule is packed so much now, and that's why the World Match Play being this week after you've had the Dunhill, the rain-shortened Portuguese Masters, and then obviously next week Perth, and then Race to Dubai Final Series. So there's not much time for this tournament to fit in, and it's done well to attract the sort of field it has. But
was there any feel why Bavel is pulling out of Europe?
Well, they want to focus on the China Open. That they established that tournament nearly 20 years ago, and they really want to make it into a huge event. They've got qualifying across China. They've got the Junior China Open. They've raised the prize fund. I think it's now to $3.5 million. They want to raise it even more and attract a stronger field to the National Open of China, and they move it around the country as well. So I think they really want to focus on that. It's a key market for them as well, with a growing middle class and buying their cars. So
that's
focus really on that.
That's kind of what I thought, but I wasn't going to say it. I'll let you say
it. But it will be a good event nonetheless, and it will be good if Patrick Reed can go advance to the weekend.
That'd be nice. I'd like to see that
as well. So it's a good European field as well. So Tongchai Jaidi from Thailand as well. So it's a good international field. So we've had a very long discussion this week. Varied as ever, and entertaining, hopefully. But next week will be a huge week as well, as we look back on the week 15, and then we move ever closer to the Race to Dubai Final Series and the race for second place, as Rory sort of limps to glory. It should be good. So, but from myself and from Les and from Elizabeth, that's good evening for this week.
Cheers.